So today I'm going to show you one of my first ever computer. Actually, it's not this actual model because this is one that was given to me because I gave away my original one, but it was from around about the same period, and I've got a very early version of the Acorn Electron here. Acorn Electron, it was released kind of as a competitor for the ZX Spectrums of around that sort of period. The BBC Micro was obviously a very capable computer, very commonly seen in classrooms around the UK at the time, and they wanted to. It was quite expensive for the home computer market, so they wanted to release something that was fairly compatible, use the same basic programming language, and this is what they came up with and released. Obviously got some limitations based compared to the BBC Micro, which is quite interesting to sort of look at, and maybe I'll do a comparison video with some of the games at some point. But yeah, this is my Acorn Electron. Probably could do with a bit of a clean actually. It's a little bit dirty, but it's in otherwise. I mean, it's in very good condition. I think I'm not sure the colour of it, if that's quite the original colour. Obviously it is very beige, but I think it was beige originally as well. Obviously the screen, everything just needs a bit of a clean really. The screen, the surface of the plastics here, just a little bit of ingrained dirt in it. Yep, there's the back. You can see the edge connector there. So whereas the BBC had a good range of sort of like pin connectors, really good quality, but quite expensive I think to implement in a device. So this one, that's one of the cost saving measures. It's just got this edge connector, but there are various upgrades that you can put onto there, and I have got well, I've got a couple of things that I can slot onto there. One original, one modern solution, which I'll show you in a bit. Yeah, good quality keyboard, really good quality switches, still work really well today, sound really good when you're typing on it. Just have a bit of a look inside. I've already taken the screws out of this, so it's just as you can see, good quality printed circuit board, sort of keyboard with switches in, no membranes here. You've got to be a little bit careful with this ribbon cable because I think they are quite prone to breaking, particularly considering this is probably nearly 40 years old. Just show you the inside. So here we go. The reason you can tell this is quite an old one, original one, is if you look at what they call the ULA, the uncommitted logic array there. So this was a cost-saving measure that they put into place to try and reduce the number of components on the board. And this, replaces a lot of the components that are on the BBC. Much smaller board, much more compact, and it sort of handles sound, video, things like that. I'm not sure the exact technicalities, but I think this is part of the reason it's got very reduced capabilities from the BBC. Something to do with the way the clock speed works. So it should work at 2 megahertz, I think, but it ends up running at 1 because it can only access certain things on every other clock cycle. Again, we've got the 6502 processor there, which again is the same sort of process that you've got in the BBC and many other micros for that sort of period of time. Yeah, so we've got a good range of outputs here. We've got the radio frequency output, RF output. We have the composite, which I've modded slightly. I'll show you how I've modded that in a minute. And we've also got the RGB output, and then that's obviously the tape connection for the tape, external tape that you would use on here. Yeah, I'll show you just a couple of things I have actually done to this. I mean, I'm no electronics expert, but I did find originally when I was using the composite out, for some strange reason they made that black and white when they produced this board. For no good reason for it, I don't think. I suppose at the time maybe it just looked better if you were using some sort of monitor, PC monitor perhaps, that didn't have colour, and I suppose I presumed that people would use either the RGB or the RF to get colour on a television or such like. But there's a jumper here on, trying to hold this in. Just move the camera slightly. There is a jumper just there, and if you can see, just about see, I've actually sort of soldered over it there. So there was nothing on there originally, but just by soldering over that jumper, you can actually turn this into the composite out into colour, which is just a modification I did because it was fairly easy to do. I'm not really much of an expert. So there's a big massive blob of solder on there. I've blobbed on there. Another slight thing that I had to do for this, when I first got it, when you plugged it in, it was very loose, was the connection there, and it kept switching itself on and off, and the feet from the DC connector in there with this sort of solder had sort of cracked, and basically that's all. It's just the solder that's holding that in place really. So I guess with it being plugged in, unplugged, there's no switch on this, so you either unplug it and plug it in, or switch it off and on at the wall. So that had deteriorated slightly. So I pulled this board out and I just reflowed that solder, put a bit of extra solder in there. Again, I'm not a massive expert on these things, but it seems to have done the trick, so that's nice and solid now. So that's my Acorn Electron. I've got a data recorder, proper original Electron data recorder. I've got it in storage somewhere. Maybe another video I'll get everything out that I've got. I've also got a +1 interface, which slots onto the back here. It's the same width as the Acorn Electron, and just sort of makes it a bit longer on the back, and adds some of that sort of connectivity perhaps that the BBC had. It had some extra sort of ROM slots, so you can add some ROMs or cartridges in there, an analog port, so you can have an analog joystick. Not a massive fan of joysticks on these, to be honest with you. I don't think they really add a lot. A lot of the games play really well with the keys and the keyboard, and also a parallel port, I believe, so you could connect a printer, which I haven't got. But I just want to show you how I do use this really now. So the one thing I've got, again, loading of tape, it's time consuming, it's timely. I never had a disk drive for this, and I haven't got a disk drive for it. But what I have got is this modern, it's the ElkSD64 SD interface, and this attached onto the edge connector at the back there. I'll show you it in operation in a bit. And I've got an SD card plugged up. It's a micro SD card plugged into a SD card converter there, and this acts as a floppy drive emulator. Adds an extra 32K onto the board actually as well, but acts as a floppy drive emulator. It's got built-in sort of menu functions, so you can just load it straight into a menu, select your game, and load it straight up. Very similar to the MMC solution I've got on the BBC Micro, if you've watched that video of mine. So a great little solution, just means that you can very quickly load up the games that you used to like to play. Good little graphical interface that sort of goes on. So a good little solution. I definitely recommend something like this. I mean, I've seen various ones. I think it's obviously a project that you can probably print and create yourself, but this one's been put nicely into a little 3D printed case, so it's just a nice little compact solution. So I'll get it all wired up, get some games loaded. Right, so I've got it all connected up again, as always. When I tried to put it all back together again, it didn't work straight away. I do think a lot of sort of contacts and things just need sort of cleaning, particularly when I'm disconnecting the keyboard, reconnecting it. It took me a while to get the brake key working. I had to really sort of just sort of squeeze the connectors, just to make sure everything was really connected properly. Probably a bit of reworking needs doing, but that's probably something I want to sort of eventually develop onto making, working with like soldering irons and doing a bit more sort of like trash to treasure stuff like RMC does, like Neil does on there, and Mark fixes things. So maybe one day I'll develop that. Maybe clean up my systems, get things tidied up, recap things, just try and make things a bit more future proof. But anyway, I've got it up and running again. I've got the ElkSD64 plugged in, so we'll just switch it on. Listen to that nostalgic beep sound. It's not quite the same as the BBC, it's just a single beep, this one. I've switched it on the thing. So straight away we can see this isn't the what you would see normally at the top here. We normally say Acorn Electron and then the little Acorn ASCII character there. But it's got 64K. Obviously it's 32K normally, so it upgrades it straight away to 64K. And I'm guessing a lot of the most games that are designed for this use the full memory. There isn't any to spare. So just for the disk filing system and stuff to run in the background, I think just needs that bit of extra memory, so there's no conflicts there. And you can see it's connected because it's come up straight away as Electron MMFS SWRAM EPP. So that's well, it just tells me that the ElkSD64 is actually connected. It's also showing up that it's got +1 compatibility. If we type in help, we can see we've got a range of sort of commands that are connected, different ROMs, the MMSFS, which I think is something to do with file systems. So we've got disk utils, various different things that are, and the retro hardware +1 support, so which comes with the if we had the +1 interface, we'd have sort of similar sort of utils and things that we could use. So obviously this is a basic, boots into basic. You can do some very simple basic, just the same as you can on the BBC basically. So simple basic programming there. And similar to the BBC as well, if we reboot it, we restart it and do a shift and break, and that's why it's so important I got the break working, because otherwise you can't load the discs. Well, you can actually, but you have to load them from we do a start cat, that shows us what's on the disk, so we're on disk 0. If we do dcat, it shows us all the disks, and again all these disks are all loaded onto the SD card, all with multiple games on, and there's a nice little menu system on disk 1. We could change the disks manually by doing D-in, but we don't need to do that. If we do shift and break, it should boot the boot menu straight off the original, straight off the disk 1. One thing you notice straight away compared to the BBC is how much slower this menu works, and I don't know if that's to do with the way that it interfaces, might be partly, but also just because the machine is considerably slower. And it's quite amazing actually how I haven't played this for quite a long time, the Acorn Electron, and I've been playing on my BBC. Obviously this was my original machine, and I hadn't realised how different some of the games were. I thought the games were almost identical, but there's quite a lot of difference if you look at some games, and maybe in a future video I might do I want to get a capture card. Maybe I can do some comparisons between the BBC and the Acorn Electron versions. Might be quite interesting just to see. So let's go and again, this menu system, it's not as easy to navigate. You have to use a lot of controls to do it, but let's go for a bit of Galaforce, which I showed you on the BBC. It's still a really good game, and I remember it really well at the time, Galaforce and Galaforce 2, but obviously this is a cut down, slower working version. Now I've had some issues loading games on this, and I don't know always if that is the Acorn Electron that's got some sort of minor issues on it perhaps, or maybe some of it does need reworking, restoring, or whether it's just the because this is kind of a community built sort of board, and maybe there's just some slight incompatibility, some issues with the way that they've implementing the menu, so it doesn't load the games properly. But I have had a few little issues. I'll maybe show you some of them in a bit. But this game works pretty well. Last time I tried it. There we go. Right, so we don't get that beautiful intro music that we do on the BBC Micro, but still a very playable game. Might just try and adjust the screen, because we are definitely missing some bit of screen here. Still having a bit of trouble with this screen. Just can't get the top of it to display properly. So you can see, I think the score and things are up at the top of the screen there, but all you can see is just the bottom of them. But it's still quite a quick game. It's amazing. Obviously, it's nothing like as quick as it is on the BBC, but it's amazing how they've managed to actually port this over to the Acorn Electron. I think a lot of the limitations of the Electron, it's not just the speed of the processor, but it's a lot of the graphics modes take up a hell of a lot of memory, leaving a very limited amount of memory to actually program the games into, particularly some of the high sort of graphical modes. Here we have one of the most ludicrous ports I think I know of any time. We've actually got SimCity ported, I guess in the early 90s when SimCity came out for the Amiga and the PC, ported over to the Acorn Electron. And I know there was Commodore 64 games and such like, but it's just quite extraordinary because it really struggled with sort of any graphics. And from what I understand, this is an actual a playable game. Never really played it myself, but I'm going to use the ZX. So let's see if I can build a bit of road. That's it. Bring that up there. Alright, just trying to zone in some is that residential? I'm guessing that's residential. That's commercial, isn't it? Right, so I've zoned in some commercial, that's residential, obviously with the houses on it. So let's put in a bit, and then let's try and put a it says power lines. Is that power lines? Yeah, power lines. Which one's power plant? Try that. I have to tell what everything is on here. I guess you probably needed some. Well, that's the bulldozer, isn't it? That I've got there. There, that'll be power plant, I would think. Let's put a power plant in. Coal or nuclear? What do you think? Let's go for a coal power plant. Probably cheaper. So let's build some power lines and connect our. Some more residential. Probably going to need some industrial as well, aren't we? So I'll put some industrial down here. Like I say, it's very seems to play alright. I think this show these bars over here show me that I want more industrial, doesn't it? So oh, and some more commercial. I think it's requesting now. Right, is that my budget? Let's try that. Oh, there we go. Yeah. No, so it shows you what you're spending your money on. You see the overall map there. It takes a little while to draw. I suppose because some of the graphics modes took up so much memory, I'm guessing all that memory was basically because of the stored screen space. So some of these more advanced games, they actually made them in, didn't utilise the full screen. I guess that was so that they could make a bit more memory available. So we get some quite interesting sort of statistics. These seem to be a save feature here. Disasters. Build a port. Let's put a port in, shall we? Can we? There we go. Use the arrow keys to move. Let's put a port right here. There we go. We've got a port. Anyway, it's quite incredible what they managed to cram onto the Acorn Electron here in this game. Here's another game that I remember really fondly on the Acorn Electron. So it says it's Repton 3, but actually what I've got loaded is Repton Through Time. Repton 3 came with a level editor, and you could create all your own levels, you could create all your own sprites, everything. You could customize everything on it. So there was a number of add-on packs that were released. Repton Through Time, the Life of Repton I think it was called, where it was all different ages, each level was a different age. So this is Repton Through Time, so each level sort of section is, or there's a series of levels for each time, so it starts off in the sort of caveman era. So I'll show you the game and I'll show you the editor. So this is classic Repton really. You've got I think you've got to collect all the grapes, you've got to collect all the food, and you can collect the spears as well. That egg there I think is some sort of creature, so if I move out of the way it should get crushed immediately by the rock as soon as it hatches. So you can move the earth and collect the what's actually supposed to be the diamonds. It's a puzzle game really, so you just have to be careful. It's easy to get yourself trapped if you make the wrong move. You can push those out of the way, but that's not necessarily the right thing to do, but we'll see. So this is the caveman period of time. Repton Through Time. Oh, I think I collected something poisonous, some poisonous berries. Anyway, so that's the game. And here's the editor. So you can select the actual level editor. So this is where you can actually build up the level. Obviously, it's quite painstaking with these buttons, but I did spend quite a lot of time, creating levels myself. I think the problem I had, because I was using a tape deck, it was actually quite difficult to save them. It was a bit unreliable. I was saving on a tape deck, so so you can move things around. So yeah, it was a bit unreliable saving on the tape deck, so I kind of spent a lot of time actually designing them and save them, and I won't be able to actually load them up again. So you can put in keys, things like that. And this bit here, you can actually edit all the sprites. So if you click on tick first, and then click on the sprite there, so you can edit. You can choose which sprite you want to edit, and you can actually change them. I believe you can actually change the colour palette as well on this game, but I haven't. You can actually set the animation and things like that, and invert pixels. Well, look at that. Some quite cool tools on there. You can just wipe it completely. I believe you can change the colour palette, but I haven't quite worked out how to do that on here yet. So you've got some nice little drop-down menus. It's quite a nice little GUI for the Acorn Electron, really. It's quite impressive. Choose which maps you can design up to what's that, 8 maps you can design for each sort of design. So I guess this is how the Repton Through Time and was potentially actually developed. This game is Percy Penguin, and it's a Pengo sort of clone. There's an arcade game called Pengo. It's quite a good clone. I remember playing it quite a lot, so I'd forgotten about this. There's a nice little sort of screen there that comes up if you sort of wait a second. It comes up on there. That's interesting. So if you haven't played this game before, the idea is you've got to try and squash the baddies with the ice blocks, and you can push them. They can break them. I think at the top it shows you how many are left to kill. So every time there'll always be 3 on the screen, and every time you kill one, they'll respawn until eventually you've run out of monsters to kill. That's it, there's just one left. It's all sped up a bit now actually, which is probably just because there's less sprites on the screen, so it can run a little bit quicker, but because it adds that sort of a sense of urgency and makes maybe the difficulty a little bit harder. You can get quite a big bonus if you can line up those 3 sort of yellow coloured blocks, ice blocks. Oof. So it's very hard very quickly, but as most arcade games of the time did, didn't they? But just gonna get me there. If this is a good place to go. Oh, got one. Just a bit awkward, the controls sometimes, you just need to really press it. That's it, there's 2. So it's starting to speed up again now. Ooh. You can break blocks yourself if you just push them into a block that's blocked basically. So there's some of the games from my childhood. I think what I'd quite like to do is actually compare some of the Electron games and get next to the BBC games and actually just look at the difference in the sort of resolutions, the speed, you know, see if they've cut anything out of the Electron versions when they've developed them. So that hopefully might be a future video, but thanks for joining me.